Hey, welcome back to another More Insights and Strategy data-centric podcast. My name is Matt Kimball, and I'm what am I? I'm a VP and Principal Analyst. How do you like that for data center technologies? And today we have a really, really good conversation going on. With me, I have two tech luminaries. The first is Hollis, no, I'm just kidding, Lee Caswell, SVP of Solutions and Product Marketing at Nutanix, and Daniel McGinniss, VP of Product Management at Cisco. So listen, it's been all this news out in the marketplace about this relationship that's formed between Nutanix and Cisco. So we wanted to grab two guys that know the most about it and have a conversation about what this means, what it means for the market, for customers, and what this is all about. So guys, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me and taking the time.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Hey, so let's jump right into it, okay? I want to get through the who, what, when, where, why kind of scenario, if you will, around this relationship, and kind of talk about the value it's going to deliver. But let's start out what's special about this relationship? What drove this relationship to start with? I mean, you both have lots of partners out there, so let's jump right in.
It's interesting, right? I mean, one of the things we noticed, right, is that the best partnerships, right, are customer driven, if you will, right? So customers pushing us together, right? And so we've had just a lot of inquiries over the years. Hey, how could we take the best of breed here, right? Then really take the power of certainly UCS, also networking, by the way, right, and all the software expertise that Cisco brings, along with what the data services, application services, the clustered software, right, that Nutanix offers. And so we're looking at a really powerful combination here that's not just about like a simple mashup, but it's joint engineering between our two companies. And that's really important to understand, because that means now, we're both committed to joint success of our customers. And, that success, I think, is really important. Wouldn't you say, Danny?
I would, Lee. And I think from the first day, I mean, the partnership's actually been being worked on for quite a while, almost a year, frankly. And I think from the first conversation, Matt, that we had as a leadership team at the highest levels of both companies was, whatever we do, how do we make this a 1 + 1 = 3 or more type of situation? Neither one of us wanted to go in and just give something our customers would be able to get without the partnership, because frankly, there's probably enough of that out there already. So we were really looking to find something that was highly differentiated and could bring extreme amount of value to our customers. And I think that's what we did. And that's why I'm looking forward to the conversation, because that's what we'll get into.
So that's interesting. Yeah, because like when you think about, look, I've been in tech long enough. You guys look a little bit younger than me, so maybe you haven't been in tech as long as I have. But I mean, there's always partnerships, right? There's always, hey, let's go spend some co-marketing dollars together and promote this bundle, quote unquote, bundle out into the marketplace. When really it's just, here's a server, here's software. You buy them, maybe get a 5% discount, and that's the quote unquote partnership. But this goes a lot deeper than that, right? This goes into actual optimizations made on both sides for a complementary solution, correct?
It's also a recognition, right, of the power of server-based technologies, as you mentioned, right? When you go to move to server-based technologies, you really look at like I think that new hardware actually comes to servers first, right, because of the volume play there. So, new CPUs, new memory, and especially within UCS, right, memory designs, for example, right, really down to the utmost performance that you can get out. And that's really important around what we've called hyperconverged infrastructure, right, which is now what Nutanix has done, is built a software layer, right, that aggregates, protects the storage, right? So for persistent store, virtualizes all the compute, right? You build that all together. And that scale out system right now we're watching is modernizing infrastructure across the globe, right? And in part, it's because you can now manage very complex systems, right, with generalists, right? It reminds me a little bit of I don't even remember, we used to have like all these different copiers. Remember, there's a dot matrix copier, or printers, right? And a black and white printer and a color printer, and you had scanners and faxes and all that basically got brought together and could now be managed within a single console. And that's really what we're offering to customers, right, is the ability to take performant applications and simplify the complexity of what they've been deploying in the past. It's a new model for this platform of the future.
Yeah, I think if you think about the space in general, we know that the hyperconverged space is probably one of the largest growing segments in that space, and for good reason. You're you're seeing so much more. There's repatriation happening from public cloud. There's sovereign cloud
Mhm.
happening. There's compliance. There's regulatory. There's AI. All of these are driving. I don't think you'll ever get to a place where it's going to be one or the other when it comes to public cloud, but we are seeing that need for distributed data. We'll often hear us say things like data center anywhere. It does not matter where the workload needs to run. It's going to run in the edge. It's going to run on prem. It's going to run in public cloud. And I think that the technology that Nutanix offers, combined with what we do for distribution of workloads, we've spent so much time on our management platforms to enable remote management and infrastructure management abroad, that it really marries up nicely with what Nutanix has done. And I think that's where the partnership kind of begins on why this was a match made in heaven, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, many people haven't fully realized, Matt, how and why, HCI, right? Why would this clustered scale out system right now be the next thing, right, from a performance standpoint? And you can really look at flash. I mean, for the first time, right, we have storage latencies that are lower than network latencies. And that's allowed you now to
Mhm.
build out a system, a clustered system, right, that can build out performant apps or can support performant applications. And this is one of the things we're seeing. A lot of HCI was originally deployed in VDI, which is a great, pretty safe landing spot. But now it's performant databases. 90% of our customers are running databases. And so the ability to take those high performant workloads, by the way, 49% are running analytics, a large portion of which is Splunk, by the way, right, Danny? So, the idea that we're taking this together, right, is really, and we're looking at AI as just the next workload, right? GPU enabled nodes, right? And this gives customers a lot of leverage, because it used to be, you would say, what application do you have? And you would buy a specific like storage system for that. And then you say another
Yeah.
application would be separate and different. Now what happens is
Yeah.
we're basically saying, technology has advanced so much, right, that you can run applications of any type and build them together, right? All flash really being the preferred model, right, from my perspective, because the user experience is better. You don't have to plan as much, and the performance is actually terrific.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Lee, because it's funny. I talk to IT folks a lot, and it seems like the value of HCI is just starting to be realized, right? And it started out, back in the day, Nutanix was, they were the dudes. It was provision your hardware. We're talking before, throw your file and print stuff on there, and away you go. And it really has. It's evolved into. Shouldn't say evolved because it's had this capability, but really it delivers that kind of cloud model down onto the on-prem environment and offers that hybrid multi-cloud kind of environment, right? So it's like these notions, I think, that kind of misperceptions that might still exist a little bit in IT, they're starting to go away as you start to see, services like your database capabilities, other high performance, talk about Splunk analytics, AI. You start to see these workloads get stood up and supported through each HCI deployments on, of course, highly performant hardware. It's a really cool story to tell. And I actually think this partnership maybe puts more of a highlight on that capability.
Yeah. See, one of the things we're watching, right, is that, you know, we can run now wherever servers run. And if you start thinking about like not just the data center, right, and on premise, because increasingly the data center is not actually the center of data. Right? So you've got
That's right.
distributed data, right? And that's what data people believe, right, is data will be distributed, particularly when you get out to the edge, by the way. We're seeing data saying, or, analysis saying 50% of data will be generated at the edge. And so to start thinking about how we can go and build connected elements, right, from the edge to the core, even to the cloud. One of the first questions that come up is, well, what about security and networking, right? How do I build that together? So some of the interesting joint engineering that we've done really is, for example, ACI support, right? So showing that you
Mhm.
can go and configure like, virtual ports, for example, within a Nutanix environment through ACI, intersite integration, right? I mean, like these are really important areas for, I think, folks thinking about how the network configuration should evolve as well for this distributed model. We see that as a really important part of this partnership, right? As you can take the compute and networking capabilities together.
Yeah, I mean, we probably should talk a little bit about, you alluded earlier, Matt, about what the partnership was, and I think Lee just started to touch on it. So maybe
Mhm.
it's worth just mentioning to the audience here about what we tried to do, or what we are doing, because I think
Yeah.
it is heavily differentiated. So like I said, when we went into the partnership, it really was intended to be this 1+1 = 3 or more. How do we get to a place where there's something that's better out there? And so as
Yeah.
we started talking about it and designing what the partnership was going to be, we really ended up focusing, I'd say, on 3 pillars. The first one being a technology pillar, the second one being a support pillar, and the third one being a go-to-market pillar. So the technology pillar,
Mhm.
one of the things that's really unique in the way we went about this was we made sure that we kept a lot of the management tools and the orchestration tools. So for us, that's primarily Intersight and UCS Manager. That's how we differentiate. It's one of the major ways that we differentiate ourselves in this market, because of what we do with SaaS-based cloud management. And we kept a lot of that goodness into the overall solution. So what that does, something as simple as the way we build our server profiles to manage our servers, we were able to work for the past 9 months with Nutanix on designing server profiles that not just take care of what has to happen on the server, but then we brought the networking piece into it. And frankly, this is what UCS is very well known for, is what we do with our FIs, our fabric interconnects, and our top of rack. Once when software goes out into the ether, um, you lose control over what happens when the packet leaves the box a lot of times. In this solution, we don't.
Mhm.
We actually were able to take Intersight and optimize what that traffic flow looks like outside of the platform. Something as simple as jumbo frames or port fast. These are very basic, trivial things, but they cause a lot of confusion quite often in a customer environment. That's all been solved for the customer. So we've leveraged in the lifecycle management tools that Nutanix offers, we've been able to leverage our ability to do firmware upgrades, to apply server profiles to the system, which have all been optimized for the customer. So I think at the root of the technology offer, it's like simplicity. Like we
Yeah.
really strive to make this much easier for the customer out of the gate. And then in support, we worked really hard on the support model for what that would look like. So we've actually e-bonded our IT tools, our case management tools. So now all the cases are synced behind the scenes, giving us customer kind of that single throat to choke experience. And then clearly on our
Mhm.
go-to-market, we've leaned into this really hard. We're actually treating this almost as if it's our own product, with sales, with channel, the way we're enabling our sales force, et cetera. So yeah, so that to me is all that together is what's driving a lot of differentiation here. Go ahead, sorry.
So let me drill down on that a little bit because,
Please.
Cisco has by the way, you're both known as best of breed in your respective fields, right? Even if you're not the number one as far as like market share goes, you're still considered kind of the best of what you do in your respective fields. And Cisco in particular, you look at your heritage, you go back to VCE, you go back to Converged, you had your own HCI solution. Nutanix comes along. I want to kind of dig on this a little bit more. What is it? What was it about Nutanix you saw that you went, you know what? That plus, does equal 3 or equals 4, perhaps. And same for you, Lee. You have partnerships everywhere, and you have friendships. We made jokes about you're dating everyone. What caused you to accept that promise ring? Really, what drove it? Was it accessibility to a market? Was it just the value you could deliver? Was it all the above? We'll start with you, Jenny. What was that?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good question. So yeah, I mean, the decision to exit the HyperFlex business, most of the audience is probably aware that it was that we've exited this business. And I think when I looked at HyperFlex, there was a product that I also managed inside the team. I looked at HyperFlex. From a business decision, you have to decide what you want to do. It's a very hard decision. HyperFlex has over 8,000 customers, so these decisions are not taken lightly. And I think that kind of stresses why
Hmm.
the partnership was so important. But when I look at, we were a very small market share, probably within the lower than 5% market share. Great product, did exactly what it needed to do for, like Lee said, hyperconverged. It started with virtualization and VDI. That was where we excelled. Performance, excellent. But when I look at where not only Nutanix was in terms of market share, but also our ability to keep up with what they were doing. Nutanix has gone so far beyond hyperconverged. I think that's almost the misnomer, is that, you do this comparison, especially even internally, you get you drink your own Kool-Aid, hyperconverged is hyperconverged. But once I started to learn more about the Nutanix stack, they go, and Lee can talk to it way better than I can, but they go so far above it with what they do with disaster recovery and ransomware and cloud mobility. It's mind-boggling. So anyway, when we had to think about a partner, rather than exiting the business entirely, it made more sense. We know how to sell the product. We know we have phenomenal servers. We know we have a phenomenal management platform for infrastructure. And so in that regard, it's like, well, we know this is a market that the customer heavily desires. As a matter of fact, I can't tell you how many of our UCS customers would ask us to build this partnership. They would say, can we please, this was why we were running Hyperflex. And it's a big conflict of interest at that time, but that was one of the reasons it just worked. And so for us, it's really to help us, not just what we're doing with hyperconverged, but to continue to go up into the stack, run other workloads, and do all the other great stuff that they offer.
Yeah, I think from our side, what I'd say is this, right? That all of us have been around long enough where you need to offer customers choice, right? Because customers have reasons for saying, hey, I want to go and use this or this or this. And so, those are just practical, I think, pragmatic decisions. And at the same time, you look for where you can create definitive, competitive differentiation, right? And joint engineering really, and both of our companies believe that that's the core, right? And if you don't do that, it's actually kind of, you're stuck off and, selling land, which is good, right? But the idea that, we're creating an integrated experience and the that support experience, right? The NPS score of Nutanix, right? Until I joined the company, I wasn't really sure how powerful it was, but, in customer meetings, I'll say, well, what's top of mind? And customers will unsolicited come back and say, I just want to let you know how the support experience, because that experience is when you experience things that go bump in the night and it's resolved and you feel the company cares, right? That's where you really get that level of, I think, loyalty almost, right? And that, has been kind of the hallmark of Nutanix success. So that, number one. But we looked together and said, we can offer that, right, with that, all of the expertise, right, that Cisco brings in as well, and thought, hey, this is really a powerful combination, right? So that's number one. And then secondly, when you start thinking about how, what Danny was saying, right, about HCI, like expanding, right, we used to joke, move from hyperconverged to, hybrid cloud infrastructure almost, right? Because what happened was customers were thinking, hey, can you open the aperture and give the same simplicity to this new thing? So, all right, well, what's that new thing? Well, this new thing might be, what about containers? Like, how can I run containers, Kubernetes orchestrated, right, with the choice of development platforms together? So how do I do that, right? And so we were like, oh, well, we can do that. You can take the developer. Customers have standardized on Kubernetes, but not necessarily developer environments yet. And so we're offering choice around that, right, from that standpoint. And then the next one might be, well, if choice of server might be one thing, but what about if the servers are running in the public cloud? Can we have that connection, right? So that was one new vector, right, that we went on. And then another one was like thinking, well, I've got all these like filers sitting out there as well. Can I consolidate those into the same infrastructure that's providing block storage? And so now we extend that. And what's now interesting from the data standpoint is if you have the same data services, precisely the same snapshots, replication, DR that are applied across all of those vectors, right? One architecture that gives you that web scale performance across blocks, files, objects, across the location of your choice, across VMs and containers. All of a sudden you get great leverage, right? So you can start thinking about, hey, I can start focusing back on the applications, which is why we're all in this business anyway, right? Is to support applications, right? And not infrastructure by itself. We're trying to get the infrastructure out of the way. So I think, together our companies have the opportunity to provide that level of experience where customers don't have to plan as much, and as a result can go and respond more quickly to an unpredictable environment.
It's kind of, and it's kind of the time to value equation as well, right?
Yeah. Right.
It's interesting because, in a market where HCI and, the cloud, if you will, pundits will say that, hardware is commoditized in the software-defined world. You guys are proving that it's actually not, right? That in some ways, hardware is actually more important than ever. And it's certainly kind of the way you're able to expose or exploit capabilities within UCS, and likewise UCS and Intersight is able to tightly integrate the Nutanix stack. I mean, it truly kind of delivers. The 1+1 = 3. I know we all say it, but there really is like exponential value that gets kind of extracted out of this.
Yeah, Matt, it's a great point. And I think the hardware commodity thing is an interesting topic. Clearly, as a hardware vendor, we get it all the time. It always comes up, well, everybody, you could do this, this, and this. The one thing that I think a lot of folks tend to overlook until you're in one of these really intimate conversations and you start getting a chance to demo things, you could argue that a piece of hardware could be commoditized. It could have the same processor, it could have the same memory, it could have the same hard drive. What I think is very interesting about what we have been able to do at Cisco with our hardware stack, even independent of Nutanix, it's the combination of servers and software together. The amount of telemetry and sensors that we put into our platform is just one example. We've been able to grab a tremendous amount of data, send that into Intersight, and sustainability. You cannot have a conversation with a customer if you sell servers and not talk about sustainability. And it's not necessarily save the seal sustainability. It's also, I mean, a lot of times it's coming down to money and how can we save resources? And so we've done really interesting things in Intersight with our sustainability dashboards where we can spin down hard drives, spin down CPUs, change fan profiles so that we can save our and not just save the energy, but then also report out on it. So we're actually handing back to IT teams reports of how much energy they're starting to save and how much more efficient they are than they were a month ago or a year ago. So now what's really interesting about the partnership is that we start to bring more telemetry in. So part of the plumbing that we've established technically is that you're now pulling in more data. The more data you have, the more intelligent decisions you can make, the more actionable you can be on that data. Yeah. So there's a part of reporting, but there's also a part of taking action on data. So now that we get more sensors from the Nutanix stack, there's more we can actually take action on inside the stack. And I think that's actually where we're starting to have some real creative ideas on what's the art of the possible and where are we going to be in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months from now.
Well, and then throw Splunk into the equation as well, right? I mean,
I imagine, I hope everyone knows about the acquisition or the plan to acquire. So, I mean, that's why we were chuckling a little bit because yes, there's just, I mean, that just brings in, we're already starting to have those conversations on what does that joint stack look like.
Yeah. One of the new areas, of course, AI, right? It's top of mind for a lot of folks, right? So, we have this, joint ability to go and support what we call GPT in a box, right? And the idea is that now you can take GPU enabled nodes and with some services offering from Nutanix, now we can actually help advise customers how to get started, right? There's a lot of customers, so interested in generative AI, but also a little bit hesitant on, hey, how do I go and put this in? Do I need separate infrastructure, right? Modeled, managed, right? Maintained separately from what I do. And what we're offering here is to say, oh gosh, you could take the same infrastructure that's running your database applications, right, or analytics, and now you can, with the same management construct, the same data services, right, be able to go and take and offer this along with support for things like Kubeflow from an ML ops standpoint or PyTorch integration, right? And so how do we go basically make sure that you can be successful getting started if you're doing a natural language processing environment, for example, or something that looks like video processing. So, help with those workflows. And this is kind of, the area where you're like, hey, I can go and rely on the joint integration across the companies to go and take the next big workload and make our teams successful with that without having a separate team that's required.
Danny, I want you to weigh in on that, but I want to get a question in too to maybe inform your response. Do you see, it sounds like you're kind of saying like, not necessarily a reference architecture, but we're going to get you maybe, if not the last, you have to do the last mile as a customer, maybe the last couple miles, but we're going to try and provide as much of that kind of, not just infrastructure and the Nutanix stack, but the actual AI environment, provide some base kind of foundation models or language models for, as requested. Is that kind of where you're thinking?
Lee, you want to?
You can both respond.
Yeah, sure. So, well, here's what we found, right? Is we're finding as we move to generalists, right, and start looking at, hey, I can go and do really complex enterprise level infrastructure now. What we're finding is that when you go to the next wave of applications, there's a set of questions that people have. So for example, right, people have a pretty good idea of how to size and scale a system for databases today, right? You can look at RAM and CPU configurations. You start looking at like a new, like if I'm going to do training or inferencing of an AI application, well, now I start thinking about, oh, wait, now I have to go and basically size and configure for a new application. How can I do that, right? And so the ability to rely on us jointly, right, where we can go and help you size and configure that, take the application and what you're selecting and what you're deciding to help, and we'll help you be successful at that last, that last mile. That's really important, because what we're doing is we're stripping out both the perceived risk and real risk, right? So
Yeah.
we're trying to make sure. One of the nice things about these, HCI and server-based architectures, however, I will point out, is the risk of doing the wrong thing is actually pretty low. It's not like I bought the wrong thing. If you say, hey, I need some more performance, oh, buy another node at server-based pricing increments and add it to a cluster seamlessly. Oh, I need some more capacity. Awesome, great. Add this in, right? So that idea that you're scaling as a scalable pool actually reduces the risk that you bought the wrong thing. It also allows you to get started small and then build out over time.
I think maybe everything, I agree, certainly with everything that Lee just said. I think the other addition to that is, I mentioned the fact that bringing hardware and software together is extremely valuable, because there's so much you can do there the more you create a system. The other element is services. And I think one of the things that's been really exciting about this to me, frankly, you don't even know what it's going to look like until you start to make the announcements and you start educating. But our channel has really jumped on board with services. They're now looking at this for saying, well, what new opportunities does this create for us to build services on top? And everything, AI, machine learning, high performance compute, databases, VDI, all the workloads are very, very important. But our customers quite often have a major skills gap, in where they might want a full managed service, or they may want somebody to augment them and help them get started, and almost give them a playbook on build, operate, transfer, get me running. So what's great is, we out of the gate, we actually, I mean, we were, I'd say that if you look at a crawl, walk, run, we're already at a walk phase. I mean, the documentation, the order, we went orderable on October 2nd, in case anyone is curious. But we have services that we can offer from Nutanix. We have services that were developed by our own CX organization. We have channel partners that have services available. We have DSIs, like systems integrators, that have service. So I think that the answer is, as our customers are embarking on these very nascent technologies and figuring out how to get started, we have a lot of ways to help them adopt and embrace the technology. I think that's really critical in today's world.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Danny, because it's nice. It's a nice transition into a last thing I want to hit on, which is kind of the go-to-market and kind of market in general, right? So, I talk to IT folks all the time. By the way, before I do that, I want to say one thing. Lee, you mentioned it earlier about your NPS scores. Both companies, I go to your events, and I don't know if you put like subliminal messages in the software and something in the hardware, but you have the most dedicated customers, both of you, loyal, dedicated, happy. Everyone's smiling. Everyone's fired up when I go to your conference.
Why, by the way? I mean, sure, the solutions work, but we're building people's careers. That's what's happening, right? And so when that happens, people look and say, hey, I want to see what you're going to do next. Like, how are you going to help me next? Because the idea that you could go and, as a, server administrator, become like a storage administrator as well, was kind of an early thing. And now I could go and add Kubernetes into that, right? And now I can go and like bring the networking piece in. I mean, that's really important, because, AI, if, there's a lot of people fearful about AI. I'm actually joyous about this, right? Because what I found is, you basically find ways to go and stop doing some stuff. We're helping people do that in order to do more value, high values things, right? And so anyway, I just thought I'd insert that. That's one of the reasons.
You are. It's an interesting observation you have, Matt. So, I mean, I think about when I started my career on the customer side, spent the first decade there. And I think about the first Cisco press book that I picked up, and think how many people have learned and created a career because of what we've done. And then go one step further and go to an event. The energy at a Cisco Live is, and we're going to Melbourne here in a couple of weeks. And because there's so much that's going to get shared there that help people bring that back and then change the world, regardless of what industry you're in, healthcare, finance, manufacturing, service provider. They're all taking that information and it's right on the cutting edge to help give your company, our customers' companies, some competitive advantage. And you're right, they do learn that. There's a ton of loyalty there, and I think this just helps feed that.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
See, you guys both talked about channel quite a bit, though. So going back, kind of tying this back to the customers, you both have very strong channel partner programs as well. You guys, your companies. I'm sure Lee doesn't have a channel program. I think it's Nutanix. But you both companies have very strong channel programs. Do you find that there's a large set of common channel partners that you've been working through, or do you see this as kind of bringing two worlds together to address new market segments for both companies?
Yeah, maybe I'll start there. Right, it's very interesting, right? Because for a lot of channel partners, they've built up expertise around storage, for example, right? And it's been a high margin business right over the years, and great products and things like that, right? But what we're finding, right, is that that market is becoming actually, we're watching the HCI market build into that for two main reasons. Number one is channel partners have the same issues that our enterprise customers have, which is how do you get expertise? The amount of time to become an expert and be able to sell storage products is over a year. You can become up and running and sell HCI products within 30 days. So from that standpoint, right, the volume and the fact that when you go and basically build something and you want to expand it, that seamless flexibility, right, means that you've got this like adoption renewal cycle, right, that's really fast. It's fast paced. And it's based on server and Ethernet technologies effectively, right? And if you look at the number of people who understand that versus who understand like LUN zoning, for example, right? We got a really different model. So I think the idea is, from a like lather, rinse, and repeat play, and then work across applications, the channel partners that I talk to are really excited about leveraging their network expertise, which they've built with Cisco. And I think, I Googled the number of, I'm not sure this is accurate, but I thought it was like 62,000 resellers or something. It's a huge, huge number. And leveraging that and saying, hey, you know what? Now I could go into like build in like what we do in storage, compute, virtualization, right? And now I've got all this future proofing. Danny mentioned it a little bit, right? I think and then the services aspect. So services, right? A lot of industry events right now, which have a lot of people considering migration. And so thinking about migration services, right? Backup services, for store, right? DR capabilities, and even cloud services. One of the things when you get to a server-based system, like what we offer together here jointly, all of a sudden, all of those services open up and you only have to learn one architecture.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe I'll just tie on to the business element of it. So your original question, I think, Matt, was about, do we overlap? We do, absolutely. There's some of our largest UCS and Intersight partners are also some of the largest Nutanix partners. And we're finding that they're really digging in, embracing what we've done, because in a way, we've made their world a lot easier and more compelling. So when they start to see the unified support model and knowing that they can now offer that to their customers, and what we're doing with all the matter of fact, one of the things we've been doing a lot of lately, my team, we've been out talking to our channel partners and saying, what's the art of the possible? Like, what could we do? We've established all the plumbing. We've got the baseline prerequisite integrations down. What do you want us to offer you next? Because as they go to build that last mile customization for customers, are the things that as two organizations we can jointly do to help get them jumpstart. A lot of times what I've noticed is, especially as you get into SIs and MSPs, a lot of them do a lot of the same work, and then they have to maintain that work. So there's a lot of, can we do it once for you so that you can handle that, focus more on what needs to be done last mile. But so that's kind of where the overlap is. But like Lee said, we have tens of thousands of partners. I think that's the exciting partner for growth. I mean, whenever you do this, you do try to grow the business. And there's so many partners that weren't Nutanix partners that now are excited about becoming. And that's one of the things we worked in the partnership, is that any of our partners immediately become a Nutanix partner if they desire. and can resell the joint solution. So there's
I see a huge opportunity.
yeah.
Yeah, I see a huge opportunity for both companies. I mean, Cisco, that you power some of the largest companies in the world. I see a real opportunity to come down market with this joint solution. And Nutanix here at large and small, but Cisco's huge customer base. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of greenfield for both companies in there. It's got to be exciting.
Yeah, well, if you look at HCI today is only penetrated in about 17% of the business critical
Yeah.
applications, right? So, there's a lot of headroom, right, to go, even before you get into some of the newer areas that we have. So, we're just watching this as, customers start figuring out now that money's not free, right? And they're trying to figure out, how do I do more, right? How do I take more things, consolidate them together? You start thinking about, like, what's the platform of the future? And I think, for a lot of customers, there was this consolidation, right, to the cloud, right, that, from the last, 5 to 10 years, right? Data people believe that data is going to be distributed, right? And although the data center may not be the center of data, it's integrally a part of the data system for performance, for cost reasons. Actually, that's becoming more obvious to a lot of customers, and then also for data sovereignty and privacy. And so once you have that, start thinking about, well, how do I go and manage this, across the teams? And so we've got a great solve for this, going forward. And I think that's one of the things that customers are thinking is, hey, it's going to be a distributed world. So the faster I get onto a server-based architecture, the more flexibility I have to optimally place applications and data over time.
Yeah, and the IT teams are making very tough decisions around how they balance their infrastructure management skill sets with their application development and DevOps skill sets. And so I think what you're seeing is you're allowed to take these continually decreasing budgets, focus less on infrastructure, because you can do more with less when you embrace these types of technologies, and then invest that into your more revenue generating side of the business.
And I know I mentioned it once before, but I really am excited to see, I've been a big fan of what Cisco's done with Intersight from the day y'all announced it. I'm really excited. The capabilities around kind of managing, I'm not going to mention Splunk again, but I mean your entire environment and the way Nutanix is integrating in with UCS. I mean, it just seems like when you talk, Lee, you mentioned it, Danny, you mentioned it, simplicity, right? And kind of and focusing on higher value things other than kind of managing boxes and plumbing, right? You are taking all of the art of the mundane is being taken out of the equation for IT, and they're able to focus on much higher value deliveries for the business.
Absolutely.
It's a great story.
That is hands down at the center of the philosophy on what we're trying to do in the partnership, is to really drive simplicity and safety in terms of security, but also eliminating, when you start to automate more and you do it's a tremendous amount of work, obviously, to do that validation once. But once you do that, you take human error more and more out of it. And we all know that 95% of any type of outage in a customer environment is driven by human error. The more that you can remove that with automation, the more consistent you are, and the better of an SLA that you can offer to our customers, can offer to their lines of business. I think that's really the value add. The more that you do this together, the more validation, the testing, and security you offer your customer.
Listen, guys, I've taken up, looking at the clock here, I've taken up 38 minutes and 52 seconds of your time as of right this second. I don't want to take up more. I think this has been I think we could talk so much more about security, about all of the capabilities that are in the Nutanix portfolio, and potential for future collaboration down the line. But let's end it here with any final thoughts you might have, or you might want to impart on customers, channel partners, IT executives, kind of around the partnership.
I think takeaway for me is just asking our partners, our channel, to really lean in, understand what the solution offers, take a look at what we've done together and the integrations we have, all the things we talked about here. There's a lot of interesting stuff. And I'd also say to to make sure that you're considering the workloads, and don't think about Nutanix stack as just a hyperconverged stack. There's so much more that they offer to the table, and having it under unified the way it is. So a lot of good stuff. Check out the roadmaps. We've got a lot of good things in store for the next few quarters.
Yeah, and I amplify that. We're saying, the joint work that we've done together is really powerful when you get down to actually like implementation and thinking about this for, the highest performant workloads going forward. So let's get started. Dan, I'm still waiting for my invite for Melbourne. I don't know, Matt, if you got yours, but sounds like you're taking one for the team on that.
I
will offer you a free Forbes piece if you fly me over to Melbourne to cover your event.
I don't know. When you start to look at the plane, when you start to look at the travel schedule, you might all second guess it. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for the time. I can't wait to have this conversation again in a couple quarters and kind of talk about the progress you've made and some of the wins you've had. But again, thanks for the time, and we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Really appreciate it. See you, Lee.
Thanks for joining again on this More Insights and Strategy Data-Centric podcast. Great discussion with Lee and Danny from Nutanix and Cisco, respectively. Really cool innovation happening around, I hate to call it HCI, but really around the cloud operating model and delivering that down to the enterprise and to the market in general. Make sure you stick around. We're going to have more episodes with more interesting topics and guests. So thank you again.